Hi and welcome to the channel if you haven't been here before, and welcome back if you have. Sometimes I have ideas at 5 o'clock in the morning, as we all do I suppose. And this morning I had an idea. And I thought, oh, I've got to get up and I've got to make this idea happen now because it was time sensitive. So I threw the camera gear in the car, got in the car, drove down to Wyndham Harbour and set up everything so that I could do a terrific review of these two movies. While sitting in the golden hour sunlight out on Wyndham Harbour, I had the camera set up, I had the location, I had everything ready, and then the SD card in the camera was missing. I still had it attached to the computer. So I recorded some beautiful B-roll while I was down there. There's some lovely shots I took, and then I came home and I had to do this video. So next time I'm going to have to make an equipment list before I do any of this. But it was very much a spur of the moment thing. It was spontaneous as hell, but it failed. So let's get on with this. Now I've got two movies for you this time. One is a fairly recent hidden gem science fiction movie from 2017, and the other one is a cyberpunk movie from 1995. But I'll do the 2017 one first. It's a hidden gem, not a large budget film. And it's one of those movies that you can't watch while you're scrolling through your phone. And you've got to pay close attention to this one while you watch it, because it's a slow build to an incredible ending, and I really enjoyed it. Arrow Video have put it out on a Blu-ray, and I've got that on order, but at the moment I watched a digital copy of it. And it's called The Endless. The movie was written by a guy called Justin Benson, who with his friend Aaron Moorhead directed and starred in it. It didn't make a lot of money, but it is a movie that really stays with you. It starts with a quote from H.P. Lovecraft, which is never a bad thing. The two actors star as Justin and Aaron Smith, a pair of young men who are living together. They're brothers, and they grew up in a commune or a cult in the mountains somewhere far from Los Angeles. They remember their history differently. To Aaron, the younger brother, it was a friendly commune, but to Justin, the older brother, it was a UFO death cult where all of the men were castrated, and where eventually they did a Heaven's Gate thing and all committed suicide. Then one day the brothers receive an old videotape in the mail, and it's an invitation for them to come back again. And this triggers Aaron to want to go back. Justin's much more reluctant. They're living in Los Angeles, they're living together, they're broke, they're poor, they clean houses for a living, and they live pretty much on ramen. Now I've been there, so I've got a lot of sympathy for them. So they get in their old car and drive out to where the cult compound was. On the way there, they start noticing some things. There are some birds circling something invisible. There are weird stone pillars all around where the cult compound was. And so they get there and they find that everybody's still there. All the people that are still there. There hasn't been a death cult, suicide, anything like that. They seem to be a kind of new age commune of some kind. They grow barley and turn it into barley beer, which they sell locally. And they're all friendly, but oddly enough, all of the people that they knew when they were children are still there, but they haven't aged. They get a bit of love bombing from the commune people, all of whom seem to have individual skills that they develop. One guy's a magician, another's a musician, one of them's an artist. And as the day goes on and they decide to stay the night, some weird things start happening, things that can't really be explained. There's a strange tug-of-war game at night that they play in the cult compound. There are some things which seem to defy the laws of physics that occur. And as time goes on and they stay for about 2 days, the brothers find other people living in the mountains who are being affected by whatever is out there. The movie just gives you little bits of evidence here and there until it starts to go full horror movie at one stage. And we see what's happening to the people who have been living in the mountains. And it's very unusual. It's almost a unique science fiction film. It really does that slow build beautifully, which I like. I like the fact that all of the people in the compound, in the commune, are always smiling, which is creepy and unnerving. And they're always kind of love bombing and focusing their attention on the two brothers. There's an older guy who lives on a shack up the hill which has got an enormous padlock on it, and there's a mystery there. I don't want to do too many spoilers on this one because you've really got to go into it and go on the journey of this film. There are some very well chosen computer generated effects in this one of which doesn't work particularly well, but the other ones are very on point and are just enough to give you what you need. And there's also a really nice shot towards the end where we see the whole valley and the mountains from the viewpoint of what is out there, which I really appreciated. It kind of went to explain all the things I'd seen before at that stage. And the movie builds to an enormous climax, which is very satisfying, and redefines the brothers' relationship, because the older brother has pretty much got the younger brother under his thumb. He's unconsciously, because of what they went through as children, gaslighting his brother to a certain extent, and they kind of renegotiate their relationship in the last 10 minutes of the movie, which I really liked a lot. This one you've got to see for yourself. I'm not going to do more spoilers than that. That's just the setup that I've given you. I haven't even given you all the weird stuff that happens. But The Endless is definitely a movie to check out. It might not be for everybody. It might not be for people who want old-fashioned 1950s and 1960s science fiction. But I think that even if you love those things the way I do, finding some recent stuff that tells the stories and tells science fictional stories in a different way is good. You got to keep yourself limber. You can't just live in nostalgia forever. Finding those interesting, quirky, little modern science fiction movies is an immensely rewarding thing. They don't get enough oxygen, they don't get enough love, and they definitely don't get enough attention. So The Endless is a recommend from me, and if you haven't checked it out already, I think it is on Amazon Prime, but if you haven't checked it out already, I really think you should. The 1990s was an okay decade for science fiction. I think it was recovering from the late 1970s infantilization of the genre, and some interesting films were being made. The second movie I'm going to talk about is the 1995 movie directed by Catherine Bigelow, Strange Days, starring Ralph Fiennes as Lenny Nero, an ex-cop who now makes his living selling illegal experiences. They've found a way to record human experience in real time and then play it back to people using a kind of hairnet electrode thing. It lets the second person experience exactly what the first person was experiencing at the time things were occurring.
See, I can get you what you want. I can get you anything. You just have to talk to me. You have to trust me, okay? Trust me. Because I'm your priest. I'm your shrink. I am your main connection to the switchboard of the souls.
Now, of course, there are a whole bunch of different genres in this technology. There are blackjack recordings, which are about basically snuff porn. There are, of course, sex tapes of various kinds. And there are also experiential ones. So take the concept of Brainstorm, the movie that Doug Trumbull did in 1983. Move it forward 12 years. Give it a bit of a shine and put that concept in the real world as it is in the 1990s. And let it run. And that's exactly what you get with Strange Days. Strange Days was originally going to be done by James Cameron, who at one stage was married to Catherine Bigelow. So James Cameron gave it to Catherine Bigelow because he was busy with other things, and she ran with it. And I think that the fact that we have a female director in an action film which is full of sex and violence makes for a very interesting movie. Lenny's a bit of a idiot, really. He keeps replaying recordings of his time with his ex-girlfriend Faith, played by Juliette Lewis, who has become an up-and-coming pop star, who is being managed by Philo Gant, played by the ever-reliable Michael Wincott. Meanwhile, a female friend of theirs approaches Lenny and says that she's in deep trouble and she's got something that's going to get her killed. What she's actually got is a recording of two cops killing a guy called Jericho 1, who is a kind of cross between Tupac Shakur and Malcolm X. He's a civic leader, he's also a musician, and in his car 2 cops pull him over because they do that to black people all the time, and things escalate and he is shot. Now here's the cool thing about that. The 2 cops are played by Vincent D'Onofrio and William Fichtner, which is really interesting because those guys are my go-to favorite character actors of a certain vintage. Lenny's best friend is a woman called Mace, played by the wonderful Angela Bassett, who is in love with Lenny, but Lenny is hooked up on playing these tapes of his ex-girlfriend and him roller skating around Santa Monica and doing other things as well. Meanwhile, there's a serial killer out who is making some really, really monstrous recordings of him raping and killing women. Now, that's a subject that can really, really get dark fast and get prurient if it wasn't handled well. But because you've got Catherine Bigelow in there, all the violence against women in this movie is really, really confronting. And the impact of it and the monstrousness of this kind of violence is not understated in the film. It's not played for the male gaze at all. Even when Lenny is playing back the tapes of having sex with Faith, you see him caressing her, but he's caressing her face, and he's kind of, it's about the relationship more than it is about bonking. And I like that. I think it makes it a more mature film, and it also makes it a more timeless film in a sense, because it's really ahead of its time as far as male-female relationships are concerned. Not to mention the Black Lives Matter movement. This one is 26 years ago. And it's addressing the same issues that are coming up in contemporary society, both in Australia and in America, and in England and in other Western countries. So it feels very contemporary, even though it is set in the last 2 days of 1999 leading up to the year 2000. They don't have Y2K because they didn't know about Y2K in 1995. The really great thing about this film, though, is the point of view shots of the people who are recording themselves, particularly the ones where the woman sees Jericho 1 being shot and she's chased across a rail yard by the 2 cops. That one works really well. There's also another one that Lenny plays about an unsuccessful robbery of a Chinese restaurant where the point of view is perfect. Now, you've got to remember, this is pre-digital cameras. You don't have a high definition camera you can stick in your pocket in 1995. But there was a new camera that came out which would do 35mm. It weighed about 4 kilos, and so it was a lot more portable than all the previous cameras. So it was sit on a Steadicam rig, and a lot of this film was shot on Steadicam. So it was a breakthrough camera technology that enabled the point of view shots that we see in this film. And there are a lot of them. There are people looking forward and then looking downwards while they start the device recording. There's a lot of stunt work which is done using this camera rig. And it really did take the technology of filmmaking forward. Now, the great thing about it too is the point of view shots stay point of view. I've seen any number of movies where point of view is a main thing, and then about a minute or two into the point of view, the director chooses to step out of point of view. But not with these ones, because point of view is so much a crucial part of this technology and a crucial part of this storytelling. It stays there, and I love that. I love the fact that it's true to its concept in a big way. And the characters feel complex too. I mean, there's Lenny, who is totally racked by the fact that his relationship broke up. There's Mace, who has a young son and is making a living as a security limo driver. There's Lenny's other friend, played by Tom Sizemore, who's kind of a sort of security guy, private investigator guy. You've got the nightclub scene of 1999 Los Angeles, which is wild. They go to a really cool kink nightclub called the Retinal Fetish, which is total cyberpunk from start to finish. You get henchmen and henchwomen. You get some really interesting uses of tasers. You get the troubled relationships, all of which feel lived in. The relationship between Lenny and Faith feels lived in. The relationship between Lenny and Mace feels lived in. the relationship between Faith and Philo, played by Michael Wincott, feels lived in. There's just a world here. The world building in this one is first rate. This is a crazily underrated science fiction movie of its time. It combines the action genre, which at the time was going over the top with Stallone and Schwarzenegger, and to a certain extent Bruce Willis. But this feels grounded. The violence that happens to people has a visceral impact. They don't just bounce back from it immediately, even though there are some pretty severe head injuries that Lenny experiences. Ralph Fiennes is great as the character. He plays this American character really plausibly. Angela Bassett's Mace is strong and vulnerable at the same time. Tom Sizemore's sleazy sidekick is quite good, and the two cops played by D'Onofrio and Fitchner are truly menacing. In the immense amount of science fiction films that we have inundating us all the time, a movie like Strange Days really does get lost in the mix, even though it should be rising to the surface. I think it's a solid action film. I think it's cyberpunk to the max because it shows the street finding a use for a breakthrough technology, not just rich people and corporations, but street level use of disruptive technology, which has an enormous impact on a number of people. And we do see some things there that are logical consequences of this technology, but are ways in which nobody with any brains wants the technology to be used. It really is underrated, and if you haven't seen it, or you haven't seen it for a while, and remember it's 26 years old, you should really check out Strange Days again. I think that you'll find that it's aged much, much better than a lot of the action films of the 90s, and definitely better than a lot of the science fiction films of the 1990s. So check that one out. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, and let me know what you thought of the two films if you've seen them, or whether you want to see them as well. I'm going to try to throw in a hidden gem every time I do a review of movies from now on, because I think that there's a lot of stuff out there, and I enjoy the process of weeding through it. You can also support the channel by going to patreon.com/paleocinema. And as always, please look after yourself. Suddenly we've got something called Omicron attacking us, which sounds like a transformer but isn't. And I'm sure I'm going to get comments from people who are misinformed, let's say, telling me that Omicron is actually another scam by lizard people who live in pizza parlors under the White House. But anyway, look after yourselves. Watch some good science fiction movies. Watch some bad ones. Take a chance on something that looks a little bit odd. And I'll catch you next time.